more than Americans owe on credit cards or car loans. 58% of Georgia's graduates carry student debt, owing an average of over $22,000. As senator, what would you do to provide relief to those graduates still paying for college? How would you address this growing problem in the long term?
Well, you're absolutely right. The cost of a college education is absolutely ridiculous today. I think that Georgia is a great state, and I'm very thankful to Governor Zell Miller for the Hope Scholarship Program. But it seems like every time we increase the Hope Scholarship Program, the colleges and universities increase the tuition and the fees, and they make it that much tougher. And it's a vicious cycle, and that's got to stop. We're graduating young people with $250,000 worth of debt, and it'll take them 15 years at least to pay off that debt. And so we need to encourage our young people not to incur that debt, to work hard, not to feel like that they have to work a 40-hour week while they're in college, but to get that education and make sure they major in a curriculum that will allow them to go into the workforce and get a job, a decent paying job, so that they and we can continue to compete in the global economy.
When I went to college, it was a different ball game. I could actually afford to pay for it myself. I didn't even have to depend on my parents. When my daughter was about to graduate, already over $100,000 worth of college debt. And a lot of that is on my back because you have to have credit these days to get the student loans that you need. The source of the problem, the federal government, starting with the Department of Education, the government overreaching into the states. My daughter applied for in-state tuition in Florida, but could not get it, even though she met the requirements. But up in New Jersey, they gave illegals access to in-state tuition. Again, that's government. Folks, our problem is government. We need to push them back, much like Mr. Bundy did in Nevada.
The cost of college has increased exponentially over the past decade, in large part because more tuition opportunities or more loan opportunities and scholarship opportunities were available. And then on the flip side, you saw the cost of tuition starting to rise to go with that. But what's most important in all of this is, number one, making sure that when young people graduate from college, that they are graduating into an economy that is robust and has good quality jobs being created, so that when they come out of college, they can get one of those jobs. That can only happen if we are smart about reforming the budget at the federal level, getting our debt under control, rewriting the tax code, and lifting and lessening the onerous regulations that are out there which are strangling the job growth. We are seeing such a low participation in a full-time job right now, just 68%. And that is nearly an all-time low. We've got to get this economy going again if we want our young people to be able to come out of college and be able to pursue their American dream.
I'm the son of a college professor. I'm the brother of a college professor, and I'm the brother-in-law of a public school teacher. I strongly believe in educational access for everybody. We need to have American kids who aren't just competing, kids from Columbus against kids from Atlanta, but really kids from Georgia against kids from Russia and Japan and China, all over. We need to have a very educated workforce. I think three things that we can do. Number one, under the Nancy Pelosi days when they had the House, they took over a lot of the private loans and made them government loans. We need more choices for students, not less. Number two, we do need to push back on some of the tuition charges. When third party pays something, the price goes up. We need to make sure that the colleges and universities are staying competitive in their pricing structure. And then number three, work-study programs, which some universities use, open up the access to so many more students. And these are things that we have to do, but we absolutely have to be committed to superior education for our children.
agree with Derrick. It is a different time today. I was able to work my way through Georgia Tech without debt, but I see so many students now on that campus. I'm on the foundation board there, and I speak to a lot of those kids frequently, and it's a burden. The best thing we can do for them is basically get this economy going, create jobs, so when they graduate, they have some hope to get paying jobs and get out there. I'll tell you the other thing. I think co-op is a great way to fund your way through college right now. A lot of people do that in various schools in the state. But here's the issue. Of the people in this race, how many of us are really going to be able to create jobs? If you think about that, in the United States Senate, we have about 10 people who have any business experience. And 36 have been up there for over 30 years in one form or another. I just think it's time that we beef up the people who understand the free enterprise system and what it takes to generate economic growth that creates real jobs for our kids coming out of school. Thank you.
Problem today with the high cost of college education is government intrusion into the education system. It's what happens in healthcare. It happens in everything that we see. Cost goes up, the more the government gets involved. There's nothing in this document, the U.S. Constitution, that gives the government the right to be involved in the education system, nor in the student loan business. The Federal Department of Education is a huge problem. I want to close down the Department of Education totally, get rid of Congress. We've got to put this country back on the course that our founding fathers gave us, and that means limited government. Of all these candidates in this race, I'm the only candidate that has a history of fighting, of keeping the government within the constitutional bounds of the enumerated powers. Every single one of them have proposed policy that is not in this document, the U.S. Constitution. And it's the government's intrusion. And as far as taking care of students so that they can carry the debt, we've got to give them a good job, and I brought jobs to Georgia.
Well, responding to the allegation that there are no job creators on this list of candidates, I am a job creator. In my firm, we employ 18 people. I started that firm from scratch, so I take exception to that. I worked my way through Georgia Tech and through Georgia State. I was a mechanic working my way through Georgia Tech to get my engineering degree. Then I was an engineer working my way through law school. So I was very fortunate. I didn't have to incur much in the way of debt. But what's going on in America today is that many of the very good paying blue-collar jobs that would provide you a good income and good benefits in a factory, skilled jobs, are gone. They have been shipped overseas, and we're seeing way too much of the Walmartization of America, where we're buying things from overseas instead of making it here. We need to pursue policies that will return jobs to America, good-paying, middle-class jobs for people who don't have to go to college, who don't want to go to college. The basic problem with it is too many people are applying to college, and so colleges are raising the prices, and there aren't enough jobs for those college graduates when they come out, and they're stuck with debt they can't afford.
Mr. Gardner. John Clark with the Georgia News Network and my colleague, News 3's Teresa Whitaker, are joining us now for the next round of questions, and they're in the balcony. John?
Good evening, Phil. Our next question is for Derrick Grayson. It comes from Alan Brock Peavy, the Leisure Inquirer reader, who asked, what can be done to either fight against Obamacare or to make it more affordable? Alan says he's asking because in order for him to keep the same policy he had with his company, he now has to pay more than twice as much. But if he chooses a cheaper option, he says the deductible is ridiculous.
Let me point out a few things that a lot of people are unaware of or didn't pay attention to. First, and I've said this before, government has no business in health care. It should have never passed in the first place. However, we have a good health care system already. It needed tweaking at the state level, pre-existing conditions, portability, etc. What happened was, however, after Hillary Care failed, Republicans had 8 years to do something about the health care issue by encouraging states to address those problems, and they said not a single word. Then we get Obamacare, and now they are running on this platform. I want to repeal Obamacare, replace it with this plan, that plan. Why do you want to replace it? The only thing, sir, that can be done, repeal Obamacare and let the states work with private industry to address the issues that we have as it relates to coverage. And you can keep the coverage that you have, and you ain't got to pay attention to that like Obama told you.
Well, first of all, let's call it what it really is. It's the Obama healthcare tax, an $800 billion tax that is crushing jobs and affecting families by sending their premiums soaring. We saw a report just in the last couple of weeks that we're going to see some of the sharpest increases in premiums out there. We need to repeal it in its entirety and then deal with the areas of our health care plan that need to be addressed. Congressman Tom Price has H.R. 2300 that sets up the legal framework so that plans can be portable, so that people can take their plan with them versus it being tied to their employer. That gives us continuity of care. High-risk pools for people with pre-existing conditions. Additional medical malpractice so that we give relief to physicians who are so pressured to practice defensive medicine, which helps to drive up the cost. And then lastly, making sure that we do everything we can to be patient-centered and not have the federal government between you and your physician's decisions. Because if the federal government can tell us what our health care is, that means they can tell us what it isn't. It needs to be repealed in its entirety. Thank you very much.
Healthcare is 1/6 of the economy. We have to repeal Obamacare. We need to replace it with a market-driven, patient-centered healthcare system. 4 things we should do. Expand health savings accounts so that patients have more options and have an incentive to pocket our savings so that they can pocket the difference. Number 2, allow people to buy health care across state lines just as they can just about any other product. Number 3, allow small businesses to pool together so that they can get the economies of scale that large businesses get. And number 4, push back on the frivolous lawsuits so that physicians aren't practicing defensive medicine and driving up the cost. And I want to say nobody has sat back in the U.S. Congress. We have passed expansion of health savings accounts under Republican administrations. We also pushed these state high-risk health plans, leaving it up to the states to fund them themselves. And number 3, we did pass out of the House Association of Health Plans. They were killed by the Senate, which is why we need to have new leadership in the Senate so that we can turn this country around. Thank you.
Alan, my wife and I feel your pain. My wife was here tonight. We met in first grade. We've been married 42 years. And last year we got a letter from my federal government that canceled our insurance policy, independent of what our president told us. And I got aggravated. She'll tell you I got more than that. But she fought through, and we now have the recommendation from our federal government. We weren't smart enough to know what was best for us, and we didn't have a substandard plan. Our plan was also canceled, and our rates more than doubled. And we're told now that we have to have vision, hearing, drug rehabilitation, and oh, by the way, maternity. Now, if my wife has a baby today, we got a real issue. In all seriousness, this thing needs to be repealed. It's the worst thing in American history, legislatively. 70% of small business today have stopped hiring or have cut back employment because of Obamacare. Yes, we need to replace it with proper solutions that we didn't have back between 2000 and 2008 when many of these guys were sitting in Congress. I'm absolutely supportive of Tom Price's bill and will fight to get this thing repealed. Thank you, Al.
There's nothing good about Obamacare. It must be ripped out by its roots and get rid of forever. And I've got the plan. It's called the Patient Option Act. It's a 77-page, market-based, patient-centered health care plan. I wrote it as a doctor, and I know what my patients need. It's been endorsed by the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. That's the conservative alternative to the AMA, as well as Freedom Lawyers. And it puts you in charge of all your health care decisions. It's the only Republican plan that keeps a federal bureaucrat from making health care decisions for you or your family. It'll make everybody's health insurance much cheaper. It provides access to good quality health care for all Americans, and it's going to save Medicare from going broke. And it does some very innovative things. For instance, if you contribute money to the local hospital, the indigent care, it gives you a tax credit. Think about what that does. It takes money out of the hands of the bureaucrats and the politicians in Washington and puts it where it should be, and that's taking care of people's physical needs. That's the kind of plan that we need, patient optionality.
Obamacare is awful and needs to be repealed. But regardless of whether it gets repealed or not, we need to bring down the cost of health care, not just rearrange who pays the insurance and how. Health care is much more expensive here than anywhere else in the world. And a big part of the reason for that is we pay more for medicine than other countries do. And it's because the patent laws in this country are still enforced to provide a true monopoly market power for the drug companies when they are not enforced that way in the other countries. We all know that drugs are much more expensive here than in Canada, much more expensive here than in Italy or Germany or Sweden. It makes sense that we would pay more than Africans do who are living on $1 a day, but we should not pay more for our medicines than the Swedes and the Canadians. I propose a reform to the patent laws that will stop the drug companies from gouging Americans in order to subsidize the cost for foreigners. With your help, we can make that change.
I think it's appropriate that I'm the last person to answer this question because I am the only one up here who said that I will repeal Obamacare and replace it with something that truly does work, bring down the cost of health care for all Americans, or get out of the way. And I ask my colleagues to take the same pledge, put some accountability, some skin in the game for the people of the great state of Georgia and for the American people. This plan was designed poorly from the very beginning. It was unconstitutional. You're trying to force young people, when they turn 27, when they get their first job and barely can afford to buy health insurance, to purchase something that is the most expensive, not the least expensive. It's like saying to these young people, well, you need to buy whole life insurance the day you get out of college or the day you have your first child. No. What they need is term life insurance. The analogy to that is in health care, they need a health savings account with a low monthly premium and a high deductible with catastrophic coverage. It's very simple.
Our next question is for Karen Handel. It comes from News 3 viewer Ray James. Ray wants to know where you stand on climate change. Do you think it is a real issue or just a myth? And on this topic, please explain your approach to balancing environmental and economic concerns.
Thank you very much for the question. You know, the climate's been changing in the world for decades, centuries, since the beginning of time, and really the science is unclear about what is causing that. What we really have to be focused on is getting the right balance between environmental protection, because of course we want to be good stewards of the environment for those that come after us, but we also can't let liberal-leaning environmentalists deter us from doing things like the Keystone Pipeline, from being able to drill for good energy sources here in the United States so that we can control our own energy destiny. We've been waiting for decades to have an energy policy in this country. It is time to get moving with that so that we can then, again, drive our destiny. Imagine if we can become suppliers from an oil standpoint. We then strengthen our hand in the global marketplace around the world and strengthen ourselves from a security standpoint, national security standpoint as well. So we've got to resist that temptation of letting the environmentalists make this into a rawly emotional issue that is driving economic policy in this country.
I don't think anybody should be afraid of the science on climate, but I think we should be afraid of the politics. Because what we're seeing is a lot of politically driven stats, which we have to question. Are they real or do they have an agenda? Recently, we saw that the former head of Greenpeace walked out on this because he said that the books are cooked. Now, I don't know all the details on it, but I want to say this. I don't know anybody who doesn't want clean air and clean water. We're all together.